Peace of Mind podcast merges business and psychology.
These topics are designed to inspire solutions for entrepreneurs to provide insights that improve their overall mental health and business success.
So we are here with Destiny. I'm so glad that you're here joining us with the Peace of Mind podcast. And I just want to open up with being able to let people know who you are. So can you share your background? We like to ask the question of who were you in high school, but definitely share with us where you grew up. Did you go to college? Are you married? All of the juicy tips of who you are.
Awesome. So my name is Destiny Fry. I grew up in Rialto, so our town all the way. Graduated from Eisenhower High School in 2009. So I was a cheerleader, a cool nerd, right? Yeah. So I was a cool nerd. So one of the smart kids in the class, but I was too cool. But I passed all my tests, so my teacher would be upset because I wouldn't always do my work, but I aced everything. So I was one of those students. Something I always point back to in my history is that I was the first and only 7th grade president at Frisbee Middle School.
Oh,
and
wow.
so that's something I hold pride. So that speaks to who I am.
Yes.
So
was it because it was a brand new school? Or?
No, Frisbee had been around forever. And so because of me, they actually ended up changing the rule. So a 7th grader had just never won before.
What?
And so I was the first one to ever win. And then it caused a big old ruckus and everyone was upset because I beat an 8th grader and it was weird. And so after that, they were like, 7th graders can't run anymore, which ended up making me the first and only. So that's something that I think is kind of cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
And then also I am married, newlywed, 9 months. So fresh in this thing.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I have a 9-year-old who is my absolute pride and joy. She's a mini me. And she teaches me a lot of things about myself. But it's amazing. Yeah, it's really great. Full-time entrepreneur and social emotional intelligence coach. I graduated from Cal State San Bernardino with my degree in psychology and just really living life and taking it as it comes.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
So talk to us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey, because sometimes it has its peaks and valleys and its ebbs and flows. So talk to us about your journey.
Absolutely. So I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. So ever. That was not going to be my life. I was going to be in somebody's office with my suit.
Playing the safe route.
Playing the safe route.
Something about us psych majors.
Clocking in and clocking out. I did not want the risk at all. Okay. And so even with having my degree, I actually just had this conversation with my husband maybe a couple of days ago. I was like, it's so funny because God never allowed me to have a real job. And so I would apply and I'm like, I'm dope. My resume speaks for itself. I have a lot of credibility. I've been doing things. But I was never able to get a real job and I used to fight it tooth and nail. But I realized that I've been an entrepreneur since I was young. Started off selling Kool-Aid in middle school. Yeah, selling Kool-Aid.
You gotta have some self-esteem and some confidence to sell Kool-Aid.
Selling Kool-Aid.
But Kool-Aid is good.
Oh, Kool-Aid is good. And they bought that Kool-Aid for $1.
Wow,
Yes.
okay.
So little things that I was like, oh, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life without ever really realizing it. I'm also very crafty. So I remember in high school, I started creating the candy bouquet baskets for holidays. Not because I thought I was an entrepreneur, but because I just loved creating. And so whenever I would complain about not having a real job, God would
Mm-hmm.
remind me, hey, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And so I don't think I fully accepted it until about 2 years ago.
Okay.
So I fought it tooth and nail, but I still was an event producer, owned my own event production company because I was like, I have to make money and nobody's hiring me. So I'm going to figure it out. Worked doing graphic design and websites and stuff like that. Cause I was like, well, I got to feed myself. So I'm just going to hustle to do it.
And you were a mom too.
Yeah, and a mom. So I did work as a waitress for a long time, a waitress and a bartender to supplement income as well while I went to school. But I just always needed more. For me, trading my hours for time just wasn't enough. So I always had some type of side hustle going on. And then after I graduated from Cal State San Bernardino, I remember it was my last year and one of my teachers was talking about the stigma that is associated with therapy in the Black and brown community.
Right.
And I remember hearing it over and over and over again in my classes. But for some reason that day I must have been sensitive or something because it really frustrated me. It brought me to tears because I was like, so then what am I doing all of this for? If I'm not going to be able to help my people, if I'm not going to be able to help my Black and brown community. And so after that, I realized that I had to do something because what needed to be here for this world hadn't been created yet. And so I realized that's what an entrepreneur is. It's about creating something that doesn't exist or creating something that does exist and making it better. And so I like let go of this idea of it being too risky or not knowing how things are going to turn out to this. I'm mandated to this because there's people that need me.
Yeah, you found your calling.
Yeah. And then after that, I just watched things just unravel. And I saw that everything up until that point had been training. And so I've been training to be an entrepreneur my entire life, but definitely fought it because it's scary. It's scary, scary, scary. Yeah.
Talking about being scared and just that whole journey, talk about some of the frustrations you had along the way. Because a lot of times people have these ideas that I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I'm going to be rich in like 30 days, and life is going to be awesome and amazing, and nothing's going to be a problem. I'm going to have my own hours. I'm going to wake up when I want and work for 3 hours and live the life. So talk about the real frustration. Talk to us about that.
So as you said that, one of the things that comes to my mind the most is I remember watching someone, I can't remember who exactly it was, but she said, it doesn't matter how dope you are if nobody knows.
That's right.
And so for me, one of the biggest frustrations was feeling as though I had accomplished something, like I had made it. I had developed a curriculum that was good, or I had this like program that was amazing and can change people's lives, but it's crickets. And no one knows that I exist. No one knows that I'm here. So it became frustrating because it was like, okay, I'm doing all of these things, but there's no response. And so for a long time, that frustrated me until I did have to change my mindset and change my mind of like, okay, whether it's 1 or 1,000, like I'm gonna just put out what needs to be put out. So that was a big frustration for me. And then I think also another one is the time, because like you said, you think that becoming an entrepreneur, you have all this flexibility and all this kind of stuff. But I came to realize that I was eating and breathing my job.
Yes.
That was my entrepreneurship lifestyle. Right. But that it was literally everything, and that I couldn't shut it off. So sometimes it would be frustrating because literally I would go to sleep still thinking about that thing. A job, you can clock in and you can clock out. Most jobs, once you're gone, you don't have to think about it once you're off the clock. But as a business owner, it's something that you're constantly thinking about 24/7. So that was a lot for me. And then I think also just the mental struggle, because I feel like entrepreneurship is nothing but hills and valleys. And so you reach these like high peaks and you accomplish something. You do a dope event and hundreds of people show up, and then there's a crash and people aren't responding to the next event that you put out, or you create a project and that project does well, but then your next project doesn't. And so it's this mental battle of like, am I really cut out for this?
Right.
Because you're not constantly performing excellently and you're not constantly winning. And so it was like those many times where I'm like, maybe I'm not supposed to be doing entrepreneurship. Like maybe this isn't my thing, because along the way, there was more failures than there was wins. And like, in those failures, of course you learn. People talk about it all the time, let your failures be your lessons, but those failures still hurt.
Yes.
And they're still devastating. Sometimes they still cost you time that you can't get back. They cost you money you can't get back. They cost you relationships that you might have lost because you had to set your priorities towards something for it not to work out. Right. And so I think for me, there's a lot of frustrations that have come with it. And it's just like a constant question sometimes of like, am I really supposed to be doing this? Is it worth the sacrifice? Because being an entrepreneur is sacrifice beyond anything that if you're not an entrepreneur, you probably don't know. And so,
or that you don't get.
That you don't get until you're in it. Yeah, yeah. And I think like I even think like even conversations I've had with friends, like trying to explain to them my mindset. If you're not in it, it's just like I can't explain to you that it literally is me. Like I am living and breathing.
It is part of your DNA.
It's a part of my DNA, and I can't turn it off. And it's like trying to create healthy boundaries, but then it's like, but it is me. It is my boundary. And so it's like finding this thing. But I think the more you do it, the more you find like-minded people who are like you, who you don't really have to explain yourself to, which is really, really dope.
That's such an important point that you talk about, just that whole journey and the frustration. What about those times where you were by yourself, you were frustrated, you thought, man, I thought that it was going to be successful, but it wasn't. Talk to us about that quiet voice in that time where you were at this crossroads moment where you were thinking, should I continue going along this way, or should I just, quit and give up? Talk to us about that whole mental journey that you took.
Yeah. So I can think back. So I was an event producer for a really long time, producing just all types of events. A lot of it was I was producing events for other people.
Okay.
So I was helping people to curate their ideas. But there was an idea I had, which was it was an open mic that I hosted in downtown Rialto for a full summer. I went into that thing thinking it was going to be something that it did not turn out to be. And I remember being so frustrated. I think number one, I moved too soon. It wasn't mine, and I took it anyways. And I think sometimes when you move,
that's such an important.
yeah. And when you move too soon, you can get it, but at what expense and at what cost? And so I really feel like that experience, I learned a lot. Unfortunately, had to learn it that way. But in it, I think because I was in something that I shouldn't have been in the first place, I wasn't getting the results that I imaginarily made up in my head. And I blew so much money. People weren't showing up. Like I would be like anxious going into the building because I wasn't there for the right reasons. When you're there for the right reasons, it doesn't matter if one person shows up or 100 people show up, because you know that you're delivering for that one person, and that one person is going to get something out of it. But because my mind and my heart just wasn't in the right space at the right time, and I was doing this event every other week. So every other week, I was going into this building like anxious and nervous, and like that energy gets put off to the people that show up. And people are having a good time, but I was miserable. Like I was genuinely miserable. And I remember after that, I was like, maybe this isn't it. Like, this isn't for me. Like this life isn't for me, because like I didn't like the way it felt. It wasn't worth the return. And so like you mentioned like sitting alone in your own space. I think the main ideas that just always like circled in my head was like, would this be worth it for the rest of my life? Like, would I be really willing to feel this anxious, to be this nervous, to be this stressed out just to call myself an entrepreneur?
That's right.
Like,
at what price?
At what price am I
Absolutely.
willing to pay just to say I'm not working for somebody? And so for a long time, it was that battle of like, I don't want to pay the price. I don't want to. And at that point, I decided, no, I'm not going to be an entrepreneur anymore. I'm looking for a real job that I can clock in, clock out.
You were like,
and
I'm done. I'm out.
Done. I am out. And then I applied for my dream job and I didn't get it. And I was like, I'm back in. This is worth it. And so, I think it's just it. And it's still that fight. And it's still that battle. Because like sometimes it doesn't work. And so sometimes I'm like, dang, wait a second. Do I really want to do this?
Right.
Like, do I really want to do this? But I'm so far in, I ain't got no choice now. But
it sounds like the difference though is that even though you may have those moments now, but you're walking in your purpose and you have clarity. So I can even hear you in terms of the difference in your personality and your voice when you start to talk about what it is that excites you versus even when you, like, I felt your pain. I felt your anxiety when you were explaining what it felt like to go there, week after week, and you were just miserable.
Yeah.
So I think that really taking that time to be able to walk your truth is really important. And sometimes you have to be able to know what is your truth, and you have to go through those hard experiences to be able to understand what your truth is and what direction you should be going.
Absolutely. And even hearing you talk about that, I can even think back and see the difference even in myself, because when I did that event, I knew that I should cancel it. But there was pride and just this level of like, I don't want people to think that I wasn't successful or I couldn't succeed. And then more recently, I had a similar situation when everything happened with coronavirus and everything had to shut down. My self-care studio, we weren't able to open. And so immediately, I'm a problem solver. So I immediately went into action and we changed everything virtually almost overnight. And
Yes.
wait. It wasn't good for me yet. So we did it. Wait. So we did it. But then I realized that it wasn't true to who we were. So we did a lot of things that were trying to just keep up with the Joneses. Everybody else was going virtually, so we did it. But the biggest difference about who I was 3 years ago to who I am today is we canceled the events.
Wow.
We canceled the events. We sent the emails, and even in the emails, honest and transparent. Hey guys, we moved too fast. Here's your money back. Hold off until we're ready to be honest and truthful with you. And so I could have continued to do those events, and I would have been just as stressed out as I was the 3 years prior trying to do an event that I shouldn't have been doing. And so I think I appreciate you noticing that in me, because
Yes.
it was able to give me a reminder of even how far I've come since
Mm-hmm.
then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
so important because you talked about something that brought an idea back to me, which is there's a book called The Ego is the Enemy. And sometimes we start our journey, and because our ego or our pride's involved, we don't want to turn around and go back and realize that we made a mistake, or we don't want to admit wrongdoing, or we don't want to close the doors, or we don't want to pivot because we feel that by doing that, we're a failure. What are people going to think about me? What's my reputation going to look like? And oftentimes we make a short-term decision to help us right now to save face, but longer term, we end up paying a greater price.
Yeah.
It manifests itself in stress. It manifests itself in broken relationships. And ultimately, it impacts our business negatively.
Yeah.
So it's such a brave thing for you to go and make that admission to say, you know what? Hey, we tried and it didn't work out.
Right.
But ultimately, you'll feel good about yourself. And the next time it comes up, then you'll realize, you know what? I'm going to go and do what's right for the right reason.
Yeah.
And so with that, what would you give let me ask you this way. What advice would you give young entrepreneurs? Because a lot of times they have this ideal about what entrepreneurship is.
Yeah.
Right? What advice would you give them just to say, okay, I'm an entrepreneur in theory, but I really want to take this journey and make something of it?
Yeah. So for me, it's advice that was given to me. It would be know your why. You have to be so sure about why you are doing this thing. And that why has to be greater than any other adversity you're going to come up against. So you have to, and it's like, people say it all the time, know your why, but you really have to know your why in the depths of your belly, like know exactly why I am doing this. So the nights that you don't feel like doing it, you still do it. The days you don't want to show up, you still show up. But I think it's also about getting honest about your why and not creating a why that's not really true to who you are. If your why is about money, then be honest that your why is about money. If your why is about making a big impact, then be honest about the fact that you want big numbers at your event. If your why is more about the one-on-one connection and you just want to see the individual grow, then be honest about that and do it, because then that decision will help to dictate everything you do in your business from there on out. But you have to know your why, because you need something to hold on to, because this journey is wild and it is all over the place. 90% of the time you feel like you're doing it by yourself, even if you have supportive family, even if you have supportive friends, even if you have like strong relationships with people who are like there for you and are never tearing you down. It's a mental journey where you literally feel like, okay, it's me. And they're not gonna get it. They'll see it on the other side and they'll be proud.
Right.
And I know they're cheering me on, but they just don't get it. And it's like, if you have your why, you'll be able to go through those valleys and really still be able to make it to the other side.
Wow, that's powerful, because a lot of times people think they know their why. And sometimes it's the socially acceptable why. Like if I'm a parent, it's because it's my kids.
Right.
Or, if I'm I'm at this place in my life, it's because I want to have nice things.
Right.
But a lot of times what I learned is that asking a why 7 times, like for example, I really want to make an impact. Why is that important? And then you dig deep and you really, what I call peeling the layer of the onion. At that point, that's when you really know. And usually if the why makes you either cry because it evokes that emotion, or it makes you so fired up and inspired, that's when you know what your why is. And so that's so powerful that you bring that up.
Yeah, it's so important.
And I like how you said you got to know the depths of your why. And I think, as he was saying with peeling the onion, that sometimes it takes some time to get those depths.
Yeah.
And it takes some experiences, it takes some failures to be able to really get that depth that we know that it's really going to thrust us in the forward movement that we know that we want to get to. But there's times that we're standing still because we don't have the depth of our why.
Yeah.
But you can't give up.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key, is to know that you have a calling, know that you have a purpose, but you just may need to figure it out a little bit more. You need to go a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's even funny because you mentioned like about like the parent who says like, this is my why. I think for me, that was my superficial why in the beginning. And I was like, wait, I can accomplish that why any other way. So it's like the why has to be a little bit deeper, because I can still be a good parent working a 9 to 5. I can still leave a legacy building, working a 9 to 5 and clocking in and working my way up a company, why do I want to be an entrepreneur?
Yes.
Because that's not the only way to be successful.
Right.
So if you're choosing this, it's so like, why are you choosing this? Why are you choosing entrepreneurship? And so, yeah, I think you got, and it's going to take some bumping because you're going to think that's your why. And then you realize it ain't worth it.
Yes.
It ain't
That's
worth
right.
it.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And sometimes the why shifts as you
As you
shift.
shift.
Yes.
Yeah.
You get different experiences in your life and you start to realize, you know what? My why was, like you said, superficial.
Right.
It's really not that.
Right.
And sometimes we have whys just because we want to please those others that we either look up to or that we love. And sometimes it's not necessarily that. And I think the why has to be self-fulfilling.
Yeah.
If it's not, you will quit.
You will quit.
You just
Ain't
will.
nobody that important.
That's
I don't
right.
care because
Right.
it's hard.
Mhm.
And it's like you said, if it's not something that like gets you personally fired up and fulfills something deep within your core, it's not gonna last.
Right.
It'll be cute for
That's
a little
right.
bit.
Yes.
That's right.
But it ain't gonna last. It's not.
So
And then it
true.
will become ugly.
Yeah, and then
And-
you're resentful
Yes.
for the thing that you said is your why. So now you're upset with them because you feel like you're sacrificing everything to
That's
make sure you please them and make sure that you accomplish that goal. And it's like it's not worth it. Like you can be selfish in deciding your why.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So-
I know that you have just an extreme gift for being able to help guide people through visualization and meditation practices. And that's probably one of the reasons why you were able to understand the depths of your why. But give us just a little bit, sneak peek into the work that you do in that particular area.
So I've started off as doing social emotional intelligence coaching. And the reason why I took that direction was because for me, I was in like such a lost place. Like I didn't understand who I was. I didn't understand why I made the decisions I was making. I was kind of just going through life, just like letting life happen to me. And it led me down a lot of like dark roads and a lot of spaces that I didn't have to be in had I been more self-aware.
Right.
And so I went on my own intentional journey. It was about a 2-year journey that I'm still on, but it was an intentional, like full-blown, like documenting everything, writing everything down, ended up making a poetry web series after the first year that I did it, of really just diving deep into finding out who I am, why I'm that person, and if I like it or not. And through that, like just by the documentation and everything, I was able to create a curriculum called Process, which it started off as a 4-week curriculum where I walked with a group of 15 women. And we walked with each other for 4 weeks. And I really just walked them through the process of understanding themselves deeper and also understanding their emotions. I think the biggest thing that we do is we compare our emotions to who we are as a person. And I think the most powerful thing that you can do is separate yourselves from your emotion and stop saying, I am mad, I am angry,
Right.
but instead I feel anger, like I feel sadness. This is a thing that's present and that's okay, but it is not me. And so the workshop is really about like getting to the root of why we are like feeling and experiencing these different emotions and how we can use them to propel us into the future. After that, the 4-week workshop then turned into like one-on-one coaching. And then I expanded it even more. So now it's a 4-month course. And so now we walk through each individual segment 1 month at a time. Because the thing that they all said was that 4 weeks was not enough. Like they had just
Cracked the surface,
scratched the
Right.
surface, and they were like, "We need more, we need more." I'm like, "I don't have more. Like I don't know. This is
You have to go a
it.
little
This
deeper
is all
too,
I
huh?
got." So I was like, "Okay, let me find more for you guys."
Right,
And so I was able to develop that more. And so also through the studio that I own, it's Grounded Self Care Studios in downtown San Bernardino. A lot of the practices that we do are really just about grounding and finding peace within yourself and about where you are at right now. The biggest thing that we teach is it's not a place to fix you. We're not here to make things better. We're here to help you realize where you're at. And so if you are in a place of sadness, that's okay. But we want to help you explore that sadness so you can figure out why it's here, what it's trying to teach you, and what you can take from it. So a lot of my practices are really just about being self-aware. One of the biggest things that I didn't want to do is turn it into something that was helping people to fix things.
Right.
I think we have enough of that, and I think it's very important. I think I'm an advocate for therapy 100,000%. Like
Right.
it is so necessary, but sometimes you just need a space to be broken where you don't need anyone telling you how to, what you should, if you should. and anything like that. So we wanted to be that bridge, that gap. And then we send you to your therapist so that they can get you a little bit deeper.
Right.
But really just wanting to be a space that provides you the freedom to just be, like literally just be. And we do that through exercises and through unique workshops and through like, we do stuff like painting and paint and sip. And people don't realize how powerful even that is to your healing. And I know we did a virtual paint and sip a few weeks ago. So I was one of the ones that didn't get X'd out because I was like, I want to do this one. So we did a virtual paint and sip. But as we painted a waterfall. And we just walked through each emotion as we painted. So the very back was a dark blue. So we just talked about sadness that comes up. And we talked about how even in the midst of sadness and with the white water, there's always still light. And so the paint and sip is even an experience of really diving deep into who you are and what you're feeling. And so I'm just here to make people feel things or to realize that they're already feeling them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in terms of one of the things that you said was helping people to understand that there is an emotion that is separate from who they are.
Yeah.
And that while they may have emotions that they experience, and those are experiential, but that's not necessarily your personhood.
Yeah.
And so how has that been received in terms of like what kinds of breakthroughs are people having when they come to that realization?
It's been so powerful. I can think back to one individual that I did have. She came through the 4-week workshop, and she was dealing with a lot of grief that turned into anger. And so she had coined it as her being. So she had coined herself as an angry woman. She had coined herself as a bitter woman. She had coined herself as that thing because of the emotions that she was feeling, which were rightfully justified. There's no one that can tell you you're not allowed to feel those emotions. No one who can tell you how to feel your emotions. Right. But when you take those things and they become your being, then everything you do is in response to that one small piece of your life. You're grieving over one aspect. You're sad and angry over one aspect of this beautiful life that you have. During the 4-week workshop, she had the most breakthrough. And then after that, she was able to thrive in other areas while she was still grieving in this one, because she was able to disassociate the pain from this experience to the pain of her whole life. It was the most touching for me. Just because it was a very powerful workshop, lots of tears, lots of laughter, lots of hugs, and just so much that came out. But specifically for her, she came in very, very, very guarded and very like it was no getting through. I was like, all right, well, you paid for it, so I know you're going to stick it out, but whatever you get from it, you get from it. But by the end, she was so open and willing to share her story and willing to just let everybody know about who she was, and was able to walk out of that knowing that this is okay, this grief is okay, this anger is okay, but it doesn't define who I am. And that I'm allowed to still be upset, and I'm allowed to still be hurting, but it doesn't have to dictate my entire life. And now she's doing amazing, and she always talks about how much it changed her life, and that it's a bit, I don't hate, that's the right word. I don't like when people are like, I'm so, like, you did this for me. So I'm like, no, you did it for yourself. I just gave you the space. I just gave you the space. And I tell them all the time, I didn't do anything but provide the space for you to do it for yourself. So she did it herself, and she has really just been blooming and so successful in everything that she's been doing.
Yeah, that definitely is a breakthrough, because oftentimes we use the bitterness or I'm an angry woman to be able to kind of be that thorn, kind of be thorny, so that way people don't come near us. And so oftentimes we use it as a protective barrier because we are hurt and we have been violated in some kind of way. So, and we don't know how to work through that trauma. So there, one of the movements now is trauma-informed care, and just really being able to know that hurt people hurt other people. And sometimes even if they're not lashing out, they're utilizing that as a coping mechanism. So you were able to help someone break down, a barrier for them.
And it's so cool because for me, the thing that, so I have my background is in psychology. But for me, when I was going through my story, and I was really grieving with depression and anxiety and really just like all untied, just everywhere, the thing that healed me was poetry. And so the thing that really gave me breakthrough, I was seeing a therapist at the same time, but it wasn't as powerful as what I was getting when I went to an open mic. And for some reason, me sitting in the audience, listening to other people's stories, is what set me free. And I remember that year. This was the same year that I started the whole intentional journey. I was doing things that scared me. So anytime I didn't want to do it, I did it. So I remember sitting in the audience. I was like, oh my God, I would never get on stage. And so I was like, dang, I got to get on stage. Because I told myself I would do anything I said I couldn't do that year. And so I got on stage. And the moment I was able to share my story in that way, something just came alive in me. And so for me, it was about bridging the gap of like therapy and then also art. So how can I utilize this natural music and dance and drawing and nature and all these things that are already so healing by themselves, but there's not the knowledge. There's not the knowledge behind, because you feel these things regardless.
Right.
So whether you have the knowledge behind what you're feeling or not, you're still experiencing it. And so I wanted to bridge that gap and take the knowledge that I had with in psychology and tie it with the experience that I had with art. And so now I'm able to give them language for what they're already experiencing. And so for me, it was really, really about how can I incorporate just everyday stuff. Like one of the days of the workshop, it's a whole improv class without calling it improv. But after spending 3 weeks with them, I write them a new narrative about who they are. And when they come in, they receive an envelope that says, hi, my name is, and has their name in it. And they open it and they read it. And so now it's a new script. And I really just gather that by listening. So the things that they say they've always dreamed of wanting to be, the places they always said they wanted to go. They now have this card that says, hey, my name is so-and-so, and I live in a mansion on the corner of yada yada, and I'm a public speaker. And that whole day, they have to be that person. So they have to address me as that person. I have to address them as that person. And that's something we're playing. We're having fun, but they're able to imagine, and they're affirming who they want to be.
Yes.
I had an individual. She was so shy, so shy. But the biggest thing that she wanted to break through was she wanted her voice back, is what she said. So on her little card, that's who she was. She was this talkative, outgoing speaker. And so she was always the last one to talk, like normally in every single workshop. I had to like probe her a little bit. That day, because she was who was on that card, I did this thing where I called people up and I was like, who has yada yada? I forget. I asked them a question. She's the first one that responds. But for her, she was acting, but she wasn't, because that's who you are.
That's right.
You might not know it yet, but that's who you are. And so yeah, just wanting to make it fun, make healing fun. And explorative.
In business, we do vision boards. You know, we start to think about, okay, this is my future self in the present.
Yeah.
And in order for me to be able to evoke the belief that I have in myself, I need to really begin to see in the future and to see, you know what, this is what's possible. And the only way that it's really effective is if what you see evokes emotion and it evokes belief. And so what you did through that process is you listened, you took their stories, and then you just re-articulated it, you reaffirmed it, and made them start to affirm it. I love that. That's powerful.
Thank you.
And being here with you, I got a chance to be at one of your events. And so I'm able to kind of put the dots together because one of the activities, so when you were talking about healing through art, one of the activities that you had there, we literally had to act out a particular scene. And from there, like we had to utilize and we couldn't talk. That's what was amazing is that the power of the nonverbal. And so we all learned that. And even in talking with each other, so we were put into groups of threes and we had to depict a mom and her children and the mom being stressed out. And how were we going to act that out nonverbally? And then another group had a different scene that they had to, and we had to guess. And what was amazing is that even with the nonverbals, we were still able to see the emotion and we were able to talk through and process that emotion. And many people identified with some of the different scenarios because they had that particular trauma in their life. And so the work that you're doing is definitely something that is touching and something that is very impactful for many people in a big way.
Thank
for sure.
you. Thank you.
And it also helped people to have mental clarity, because after that event, a lot of people, actually after that session, a lot of people were talking with the instructor and really talking about a lot of the aha moments they have and how much more clear they had become. So share with us a little bit on your thoughts of, once you go through healing through art along with counseling, because I'm also a believer in it's important for therapy to take place, depending upon, where you are in your life, that a lot of times there's the stigma associated with it, but it is private and it is confidential, and you can do it in one city and live in a different city. So there are ways that you can make sure, but give us your thoughts on just gaining that mental clarity.
I think it's everything. I think it's literally the start. It's the very beginning of any success that you will have. Any successful relationships, successful businesses, like even just being able to live like a healthy, abundant life, I believe starts with that mental clarity about who you are and where you're going. And I think like it's almost like once you wake up, you never go back to sleep. And so I think it's so important to explore that thing. And the moment you think you know yourself, there's more for you to learn. And so I think the most beautiful thing about this journey is that it's never ending. And so there's always something else that you can learn. In one of my poems, the line says how beautiful it is that I can always love myself a little bit more. So I forever will be able to fall a little bit more in love with myself. And I just think that is what makes the journey of like healing and self-awareness so beautiful, is that there isn't a destination. There isn't a place that you're trying to arrive. So there's no pressure to get there fast. And so when you just allow yourself your pace and your time to really just discover who you are, you'll realize on the other side of it is just, it's just a whole nother another lifestyle, another life. Even if you feel like you have self-awareness, there's more that you can gain and there's farther that you can go. And the more you have, like the more you see, like your eyes are literally just open. And so I think it's so important. And I think even for me, like another reason of why I created it the way that I created it, or for the people who say they would never go to therapy. It's like, get them in there. I'm like, it's just like therapy, guys.
Yes.
And so it's like, it creates a space that says, this is okay. It's normal. It's cultural. It's culturally competent. Like there are places that you can go that will work for you. And so really just wanting to show people that there's so many different ways to get it. And I think it's important. I think I answered your question.
And I think that was the added bonus, is that you actually had therapists there.
Yeah.
And I think that the therapists that you selected were able to achieve the I'm touchable, I'm reachable, and really help decrease that stigma.
Yeah.
So you selected very well.
Yeah, they're great. They're all amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it was really cool. And even for them, the name of the every time you met one, so I had them kind of planted. And so people would end up talking to a therapist without knowing that they were talking to a therapist. Okay. And then afterwards, they will hand them a sticker that says, today I met a dope-ass therapist. And so it's just a reminder of like, oh, like they can be cool. Like they don't all look the same. Yes. Like they look like me.
It's not super sterile.
It's not super and like, oh my gosh, I have to sit down on this couch and I can't move in a certain direction. But hey, you just had a full-blown conversation with a therapist and they were dope. And so I think a lot of people really like that and were open. I think I had 3 people personally tell me that after that event, they signed up for therapy. Wow. And that's all I want.
Yes, exactly.
That's it.
Well, you are doing amazing work out in the community. I know that we are in California, so our listeners can be anywhere throughout America. But if you are in California, she is reachable. So Destiny, please share with us how people can find you and if there is any online work, just in case we have people listening that are not from California.
Awesome. So you can check me out at Destiny the Muse. And then also for our studio, you can follow us at Grounded Self Care. That's on Instagram. And then our website are the same for both of them. So it's www.destinythemuse.com and then www.groundedselfcare.com. And you can find information. We have upcoming workshops coming up the end of May. We have workshops coming up next month, and we'll be virtually as long as we have to. Then as soon as the studio opens, we'll be ready for you guys to come and join us.
Yay. Well, I appreciate your time. We could have been here for a lot longer. So I hope that you will accept our invitation for another time.
Anytime.
But thank you so much for joining us on the podcast Peace of Mind, where all things business and psychology are talked about.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No one else can move like you. No one's got your style.